Good morning, everybody. Chester ARP Church Devotional Podcast. Genesis 12, the call of Abraham. When Mitch finishes leading us in, all the way my Savior leads me. Indeed, He does.
Gives me grace for every trial. Feeds me with the living bread.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us. We get started Genesis chapter 12 today, the call of Abraham. This is when it gets good and when you're familiar with the story of Genesis. First 11 chapters, historical. Chapters 12 through 50, historical as well, but focusing on the particular person of Abraham and the descendants who would come after him, God's chosen people. Verse 1 of chapter 12. Here we go. The Lord said to Abram, "Go out from your land and your relatives and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great. And you will be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse anyone who treats you with contempt. And all the peoples on the earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went out, as the Lord had told him, and Lot with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. And he took his wife Sarah, his nephew, Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran. And they set out for the land of Canaan. And when they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land of the site of Shechem at the oak of Moreh. And at that time the Canaanites were in the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who appeared to him. And from there he moved on to the hill country east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. He built an altar to the Lord there, and he called the name of the Lord. Then Abram journeyed by stages to the Negev. This is the Lord's call of Abram, who will later become Abraham. Abram is living in the land of the Chaldeans. He is over there doing his thing in what is modern-day Babylon, or we tend to think of as modern-day Babylon. And God calls Abram to leave as he was living with his kindred and he was living with his family. He calls on him to leave, and they leave and they go up north to a place called Haran. They stay there till his father dies, and then the Lord calls them and they come down to the land of Canaan. When they come into the land of Canaan, God shows them all of the land that will become theirs. This is an interesting point early on in the story of the Bible where we see God approaching Abram for no reason. Like, we're not told anything necessarily significant about Abram other than in verse 31 in chapter 11, this is what we find. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, Haran's son, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, and his son Abram's wife, and they set out together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years and died in Haran. And so what we find here is that Abram most likely was a man who trusted in the Lord as a result of Terah, his father, trusting in the Lord. They were descendants of Noah. Eventually came from Noah, from Shem, Noah's son, to Abram. And so the faith had been passed down from generation upon generation upon generation. And now we have Abram here living most likely in the land of faithful, a life of some type of faith, but not necessarily a life of complete and total faithfulness. He was living in the land of Ur. He would have been living in the midst of that spiritual age, and most likely would have had some kind of connection to the Ur of the Chaldeans. But God chose Abram. He finds Abram where he is, and he chooses Abram to be his man. And he goes to Abram and he says, "Go out from your land, from your relatives, from your father's house to the land I will show you." God approaches Abram. He calls Abram to follow him. Abram follows the Lord, and he takes him into the land and make a great nation. He's going to bless them, and he gives them a great land. These promises God gives are that which entice Abram to follow in faith. We are called to do the exact same thing. We are to follow the Lord in faith. Jesus says, "Come follow me." In the New Testament, Jesus calls his disciples. They don't know where they're going. He just says, "Follow me." The reason that he calls them to follow him in the way that he does is because he challenges their faith. They must have faith to follow him. But he also doesn't tell them where they're going because they don't need to worry about that if they're going with him. The same is true for Abram. The same is true for you. The same is true for me. God says, I will call you. I will make your name great. I will bless you, and I will give you a land. But you've got to be willing to follow me. And here's where Abram's faith lies. He is willing to get up, to leave, and to go with the Lord and to follow the Lord where the Lord should lead him. That's a man of faith. Just like Noah in chapter 6 had the faith to build the ark when there had been no rain, Abram has the faith to get up and walk with the Lord. He's got a journey ahead of him, but he's going because he trusts in the promise of God. Let me ask you today, do you trust in the promise of God? Do you trust in the grace and mercy of God? Do you promise that God will fulfill the promises he's made to you? I pray that you do. That's all we have for today. I'll take a break for the weekend. Be back Monday. You guys be blessed.
You can